It's Monday. We're working on the Myles book, Miles Morrow's Pursuit of Happiness. I'm just gonna try and get that to come up on my laptop so I can keep an eye on chat. And there we go. Oh, that's my general schedule for anyone who's not familiar. So we are going through the layers of the alphabet, doing a couple pages each. And today it's W Day. So this will be for the second half of the show. Miles with stacks of waffles and a bunch of watermelon because Miles loves to stuff his little face. But what we're starting out with is Miles water skiing and running into a whale. So this actually took a couple different attempts to draw. Um, that was an earlier one, but then I realized to get had drawn him too low and too big, and I realized, well, you're not going to get these water skiing then. Anyway, so that's the version we're going to run with today. And this is some sort of baleen whale. I was watching some documentaries on them, and they have weird looking mouths, man. That's all I can say. Very weird, kind of creepy. Um, and it's really hard to get a sense of the scale of these things. And but we are going to give it a shot. So the usual thing, because I'm working with India ink and a dip pen, I'm going to start up there and work down here. So I don't smear my hand in the ink too badly, although I'm sure it will happen anyways. Well, actually, I've been pretty lucky with these drawings. Only minor smudges and whatnot. Um, let's just kind of start with. We've got some kind of fuzziness in the background because maybe it's a kind of like the Pacific Northwest where you have heavily forested islands and cliffs and stuff like that, and then some very big whales. And sometimes they're, you know, where the islands are spaced fairly close together, they can be in pretty close, actually, as some of the images I've seen. Plus, a lot of the islands have very steep drop offs, so it's deep, it's not like a go out to the Bahamas, apparently, is very gentle slope, whereas I think here it tends to be pretty steep. But, anyways. Now, I have seen humpback whales here, but I have not been I haven't been on like because I live on Vancouver Island, so there's lots of whales around here, but I have not seen any close up. I think the first time I saw a humpback was getting the ferry back from Vancouver coming into Nanaimo, and I'm bad at guessing distance, but I would guess it was, I mean, it's closer than a mile, obviously, or we wouldn't have seen him. But I just sort of, it looked about that big in the distance, but you could see it where it kind of dove and then the flukes came up and whatnot, and they looked that big. So we were far enough away for a big ass whale to look that big. Um, but still relatively close. That was off of Gabriola Island coming into Departure Bay in Nanaimo. And then I've seen some like driving on around I forget what the trail what it's not trail, but what the road is if you're coming from Lake Couch and down through towards Port Renfrew to come back around to Souk. Um, there's definitely a section where you can look out and see whales, and I've again seen this sort of thing where they were coming up to breathe, and you see this big gray shape kind of come up above the waves and disappear. So quite a distance away. Um, and so much of the photography you see, like you can see, where hello, let me see, Burning de Gracia. I hope I said that right. I'm gonna make my uh, text bigger in my browser so that I can actually read names from a distance. Not that's a huge distance, um, but yeah. So have a baleen whale of some sort here. And it's probably gonna they're kinda hard to draw accurately, I think. I looked at a bunch of different reference images and whatnot. I mean, you get the hanging baleen plates. Does seem to be shorter plates up here, like it tapers from the tip of their snouts all the way back into their mouths. So this drawing's gonna look a little weird, but that's because, well, they are weird looking critters. Snippet seems to be a little gummed up, but I am trying to draw the mouth of like a large baleen whale, like a humpback or something coming up to feed. So that's his bottom jaw, and then the top bit with the baleen um, is wide open. It's based on a documentary I was watching earlier, actually. It was like top five whale moments from like BBC Earth or something like that. Might have to change nibs. I think I'm going to change nibs. This one's a little not working too well. But it was something where learned in some spots what they'll do is the one whale will sit with his mouth open, so the big bottom jaw and then the top like that. And he just holds still, and then his buddy circles around and scares the fish, and the fish jump into the open mouth. And then when he figures he's had enough, he goes boom and drops down, and he's got, a whole school of herring type of thing. So, and then my character, Myles Maarav, happens to be a little too close for comfort because Myles was out water skiing and didn't know there was whales in the area. And so it's a bit of a fake perspective too, because you figure how big the whale is and whatnot. The whale would be probably quite a bit further back versus where Myles is hanging out. Um, s- so fortunately, I have a whole bunch of nibs. So, and this little sculpture I made in ceramics class I was taking is actually supposed to be Miles's dad. But we're gonna dump these out and see if I can find one that cooperates a little better. That one might. Oh yeah, that's drawing a lot better. So I'm trying to get the idea of these sheets of baleen drooping down. It kind of just looks like a fringed curtain. It's very weird looking. And I guess the roof of their mouth is pink, so we'll leave it white, but put in some dots, I guess. I don't know. This one's got freckles. Probably not accurate. Definitely not scientifically accurate, I think. But yeah, I had the idea a few days ago. It's like, oh yeah, this is the couple W illustrations for this book. And I was thinking whale, and then I was like, is he going to be on a whale watching boat? Or thought it would be kind of more interesting if he's like minding his business, going water skiing with his buddies, and oh crap, look what's coming up behind. I don't think the whale would be very interested in eating fresh mouse man meat, but I think there's actually been a couple stories of humpbacks coming up because they were coming up from below trying to get a mouthful of krill or herring or whatever, and they happened to come up and there were kayakers there, and then kayaker gets in the mouth, and then the whale sort of realizes, what the hell, this doesn't taste right, and kind of spits the whole thing out. Uh, I mean, I live on Vancouver Island. I probably should go on one of those whale watching trips uh, at some point, just to kind of see. Obviously, you have to keep a certain distance from them so you don't get super close. But I think even at distance that you're allowed to go with them, I think you'd still get a fairly good sense of scale. I am going to go over this later with a thicker nib because then I can block in some areas and have some of these stay a little more even, and that might also help to make it look a little more real. Now, and their bottom jaw, video I was seeing, it looks weird because obviously this goes around and then dips down to the jaw joint, their version of a TMJ. Um, but it kind of in the videos and whatnot just looks like it's offset in a bizarre manner. So, and these humpbacks do have things that they kind of look like giant zits, but apparently what they actually are is these bumps have like tiny like hair bristle, and I don't know when they say tiny and you're talking about a whale. Hi, Major Thandy, how's it going? When you're talking about a giant whale, I mean, you know, they have like a bristle growing out of them, almost like a whisker. So I mean, I don't know. It's entirely possible that the whisker is like 6 feet long. It probably isn't. I think it would probably be like a foot or something, but they apparently serve some sort of a purpose in terms of, I don't know, detecting movement or whatnot. So they are strange, strange critters. Uh, so we'll give this guy a whole bunch of chin whiskers, as the case may be, bumps. And then they have those weird folds underneath where this is expanding. Of course, the gullet of the whale is going to be down here, but we're not going to see it because of the water. And I believe this is the first time I've ever tried drawing a whale, let alone from a not ideal drawing angle. So we'll see how this turns out. But this part of like the soft palette, when I was looking at photos and stuff, I was like, it almost, you know, that that's not where they have their tongue. The tongue is down here, but it looks almost like they do have it. Visually, it kind of looks like they're upside down, but it's not the case. So yeah, I think that's plenty of chin hairs for this guy. So now some of it is going to be a little awkward because I have to work around Myles and kind of, if I was working with like markers, I would work front to back, so Myles first and then the background, because I'm not gonna smudge, but because this is liquid ink and I would totally smudge it, I gotta work kind of backwards. But we do have some water being roiled up here as the whale is surfacing. Uh, and then obviously when we get down here, Myles is also, because he's water skiing, he's kicking up water as well. So, and of course, the actual whale is going to be a dark gray color because they pretty much all seem to be. We'll end up again using a fatter nib to give it some darker areas that are a little punchier, like as accidentally just happened there. Sometimes you get the ink falling off of the nib in weird ways. This nib is also fairly flat, which means it doesn't have the surface tension really holding the ink on the nib. So that's something to consider when you're choosing your nibs. fact, it's kind of annoying. Let me do yet another nib change. One I think may work a little bit better. Throw that one into soak. So the B6, this kind with the little brass bit, holds the ink, tends to want to stick in there. So in theory, you don't have to dip this as often, and it's a fairly thin nib. So sometimes this guy works, and sometimes when I use it, it's a gong show. Kind of a part of playing with pen nibs. I'll have like the one that I started the show with is one that I do a lot of my drawing with, and most days it's perfectly fine, and then some days it's just it don't want to work. So that's how it goes. Speaking, it doesn't want to work. It would actually be kind of neat to go on one of the whale watching trips. I mean, obviously, some days you go out there and you don't get anything, right? But some days you get out there and you get to see all sorts of critters. Go out there with a decent camera and a telephoto lens and get some good reference photos. Whether I'd get this kind of a reference photo, who knows? It's- I think the humpbacks kind of come through my area kind of around this time of year, and then in September. I think this time of year they're headed up to Alaska. They hang out and gorge themselves up there in the summer, and then it starts to get a little too cold. Then they head down um, towards Mexico, actually, I think. And so then you see them in September migrating the other way. So this is kind of given a bit of a grayscale background. I'm, I'm going to hopefully say this right. Marwackle or Marvackle. Hope I didn't butcher that too badly. So I'm just going to kind of go through and finish up my background here. Then I can start adding more tone in, and then I know how dark I need to go on the whale to make them really pop. I think I've mentioned before with this book, when I first came up with the idea, it was based on a challenge that Struthless had set up through his YouTube channel called the Alphabet Superset Challenge. And his thing was, whatever theme it is you're doing, whatever medium, you pick a theme, you pick your medium, and then um, kind of weekly do a chunk of it where that chunk is based on a subtopic, um, and each subtopic you pick starting with the letter of the alphabet. Oh, thank you. Marvocal or Marwackle says, "This is so good. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoy it." Um, so when I was starting the Alphabet Superset Challenge, and this is actually in 2023, and then this project kind of sat on the back burner for quite a while, and I picked it up again in January. I had this character, Myles Maarav, this little mouse dude, but I didn't know a lot about him yet. So it ended up being the project was quite good for kind of making those kind of determinations. But my thing was every week kind of deciding I was going to do two Bristol boards. for a future book project and kind of pick random words to illustrate. And so, like the first one, it was like Miles goes to an art gallery, but he's imagining how he'd have so much more fun at an arcade. And now here we are on W. So we just got a couple more weeks till we kind of finish up, and then decided what I'll do is I will write short stories for these pictures. Not necessarily 26, because some of them kind of will go together and end up being, multiple illustrations for the same story. So we will kind of find out what the story will be. Although I was thinking with this one, I have another drawing I did a few weeks ago where Miles is scuba diving and he's on a reef and he sees this shark, which is almost as big as him. Now, almost as big as him probably isn't going to eat him. I think kind of you get into like the tiger sharks and great whites that are about twice the size of a person, then you're possibly in danger. But you know, Miles wasn't exactly expecting to be eye to eye with a big shark, so he's a little spooked. So this might, I don't know yet, but it could end up being a story where Miles is talking about all the crazy encounters he's had in the water and why he usually prefers to be in a boat as opposed to on or in the water directly. Hi, Trevin. Trevin Sampson, you've subscribed to the channel? Well, thank you. Awesome. Welcome. And you love the art. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. So, so we now have this kind of sense here of this kind of forested background. Now, if this was, I mean, Miles lives in a fictional place, so, you know, we don't have to worry too much. If this was my place, this would be dotted with houses on the hills. But not going to worry about that too much here. A little bit of a poofy cloud kind of look, if only to balance out the whale's nose. And to keep the sky from being too blank. I mean, don't want to go too dramatic because, I mean, if Miles is water skiing in shorts, it's probably not a dark and stormy night. But it's just nice to add a little bit up there. And now we'll start on the water in here. I'll do a little bit of this kind of scrubby kind of thing. We'll worry more about like directionality when we get down here because the water is churning with the whale coming up. And then, of course, Miles has been water skiing. But get a little bit of tone and also that sort of horizontal kind of vibe. And then also when we get down past about here, then I kind of have some sense of how dark the water is going to be, which then means I can make the whale darker correspondingly. Go run some errands in the city a couple or well, it's just really 1 hour south of here. I might have to stop in at the art supply store and fetch some new nibs. Not that I have any shortage of nibs, but I seem to have a shortage of ones that are complying. Yes, and of course, Miles being a mouse man, he has his tail, and his tail right now is doing the type of thing because he's realized what's coming up behind him. Kind of just gonna look like he has a unicorn horn coming out of his skull, but And the overall book, one would get the sense of, oh, yes, it's you got a little mouse tail. But that also then kinda gives us a bit of a sense of, how dark the water needs to be in places to kinda blend out that tail. One of the things I find with, pen and ink drawing is you definitely wanna start lighter and with thinner lines and then go heavier progressively because it's obviously if you go too dark too soon, then, well, you kinda end up just having to start over. Um, but it does mean that sometimes things look a little unbalanced until you get right near the end. I've definitely had stuff on streams, either these, Monday streams with Myles or when I work on, the Friday streams with Ricky B. Rat where I've been working on stuff going like, "I don't know," and then suddenly, like, when you got 5 minutes left in the drawing, suddenly and then you start putting in the heavier, um, darker colors, then suddenly, boom, it all fits. So, there's a certain amount of trust the process, which is always a little bit infuriating, especially if you have trust issues. But and then, this area is a little darker, so we're gonna add some other darks so it's not as so it doesn't stick out as much. I'll add some heavier, ripples and whatnot over behind the whale. Keeping in mind that the further the water is away, the less you're gonna really see that rippling texture. It's gonna be a lot bigger closer. Um, you know what I might try? Glass pens. Now, I will say there are some pros and cons. You can get a very fine line, and sometimes that's great. You also tend to get a very uniform line, and sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's really, really not. But I kind of want a fine line right now. So I'm trying to get his expression right. Normally, of course, Miles is wearing glasses, but we'll assume he didn't want to lose them to the watery deep. So I guess he's wearing contacts today. I do find this is like the third glass pen I've had that they always seem to have like on one side they draw, they won't draw, and then you turn it and they sort of draw, and then you turn it and they sort of draw. But there's going to be a sweet point in the rotation, and if it's not on that, then it's going to not draw. Uh, I think that one's going to be a pain. That's okay. We just keep flipping through nibs until we find one that understands the job description today. This is a smaller version of the one I started with, so but it's got that curve so that the ink kind of stay under it. So let's see how this goes. Oh yeah, that one. See, that one's working. Great. And yet I'm quite certain I have had streams where I was trying to use this one and this one absolutely did not work that day. I don't pretend to understand. Miles, a little bit of terrifying. This is going so good. Thank you. Well, and also, I think sometimes even like obviously you've heard me complaining about the nibs today, but sometimes that actually helps, right? Because sometimes if the nib is doing things that you're not quite expecting, it gives an interesting texture. And this obviously, Miles Miles is kind of crapping his pants right here, right? Um, or if maybe not, but like he's perturbed. So having and for lack of a better word, an unsteadiness in the way that the line is going down actually I think plays into that. Whereas if I was having um some unevenness in how the ink was going down with the nibs, but he's like sitting on his back porch drinking lemonade, like that might not work. But here it's like, you know, you have something that freaks you out. You don't, it does kind of end up looking a little scratchier or whatever. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but anyways. Now this is gonna dry. It's going on pretty thin here, so this section is gonna dry pretty quickly. So I'm gonna kind of go through and get the rest done with the finer nib, and then worry. Some days, depending on what I'm doing down here, if it's gonna be thick and heavy, I'll kind of do fine line and then fatter, deeper blacks back and forth section by section. But I think today I'm good to go to just kind of keep scratching away this way. And we'll definitely end up putting a lot of like darker tones with fatter nibs into here um, with the flow of the water and whatnot. But and I'm trying to leave some gaps as I go because now we're going to start getting some highlights on the waves and they're going to be bigger as we get closer, right? You can always go back and add extra dark later. But well, it's not that you can't take it away once it's there because, Photoshop is a thing, but it's a pain in the butt. So you're kind of better off to work lighter to darker. Uh, I don't know if we've seen Miles's bare arms yet in this book. He's usually wearing a suit jacket, occasionally a golf shirt. Um, but I don't think we have seen him bare armed yet. Got his bulky life vest. Maybe it's kind of got some dark stripes on it, and then the main panels would be orange or something like that, which we will just leave kind of white in the black and white version. Get the sense of a big fat zipper here. And these are normally all black. So this nib is very scratchy, but that's kind of the nature of the beast with some of these finer nibs. Still nowhere near as bad as, well, I can't say bad, but for my purposes, bad as when you get the really tiny crow quills, um, like that kind of nib. Half the time, I can't even get these to make a line at all. So I always see where some people, do fancy calligraphy with them and write with them. I'm like, how? But yeah, well, it depends what you're used to as well. I forget what the final page size of this book is supposed to be, but I think it's going to be probably about like yay big, like a 5.5 by 8 or something like that. So there'd be a fair amount of reduction in here. Um, Still, these really fine lines should still show. If not, I mean, it's always something that one can, again, our friend Mr. Photoshop, but try to get it as close to right on the actual paper because it makes life so much easier down the road. The less you have to do in Photoshop and InDesign and all the rest. If anyone's wondering, the blue here is a non-photo blue pencil, um, drawn with one of these Prismacolor non-photo blue PC 919. The idea is when you scan, you can do your underdrawing in that, and when you scan it in black and white, and the non-photo blue should obey its name and go bye-bye. It's kind of like goes back to the old Xerox days when you'd do your reductions on a Xerox machine. Um, so I have done some scanning with a few things, and it does work. Now, in some spots, you may end up with a little bit of photoshopping you have to get rid of, but it's usually not that bad. Paper I'm using is Bristol board. Thank you, Marwalkie, Marwackle. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Hi, Luna Stars. The thing in the back scared the crap out of me. Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's supposed to be some sort of huge baleen whale that It's kinda scaring the crap out of Miles too. But "Go water skiing," they said. "It'll be fun," they said. "It's perfectly safe," they said. Um, yeah, I was watching, something, Marwa, okay, cool. Marwa. Um, yeah, I was watching something BBC Earth, like, top 5 whale moments caught on film or something like that, and one was showing these humpbacks, feeding that way, where one would sit there with its mouth open. I think they lied to him. "Oh, I think so too." Miles does like the water, but he prefers being in a speedboat or something like that, as opposed to actually on the actual water. Anyways, so it's kind of inspired by, seeing these humpbacks where one would sort of sit still with its mouth open like that, and then its buddy would swim circles around, and all these herring and other fish would be scared, and they'd end up leaping into the one that was just sitting there into that one's mouth. So, I think they would kind of swim away a little bit and find another school of fish and take turns. Um, so there have been a couple cases I think I've heard of like humpbacks um, surfacing to do that kind of feeding and being really, coming up basically and accidentally swallowing, well, not swallowing, but accidentally getting a kayaker in their mouths and then kind of going like, this isn't fish, and spitting it out. So, Miles is probably safe, but he's, he sure wouldn't feel that way. Yeah, they're crazy smart. I mean, even when you get down to it, I mean, I think there's a lot of animals that are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. Like crocodiles are supposed to be pretty smart because you know, they're hunters and whatnot as well. Um, I mean, I had an iguana for 10 years. Iguana has a brain the size of a pea, and she was shockingly smart, could figure out how to manipulate different if she wanted to manipulate me into giving her treats, she would handle that in a different way than if she was trying to manipulate my dad into giving her treats, all that sort of stuff. And you figure out, I don't know how big a humpback whale's brain is, but a lot bigger than an iguana's. So you get, I mean, like the killer whales who figured out that if there's a seal on an ice flow and three of them kind of swim up and stop just short of the ice flow, it'll create a wave that knocks the seal out. So their buddy on the other side gets the seal, and then they just take turns and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of crazy. So now we're gonna start making the whale a little darker, and oftentimes this. There's a name for it, but I forget what it's called. I know in whaling terms they used to call it the blanket. Hi Rex, how's it going? Yeah, welcome back. Um, in whaling terms, they used to call this part the blanket, but it's like the part that's got all the folds that expands out. And It tends to be a little bit lighter because, I mean, it's on the underside of the whale too. So they can afford that to be lighter so it camouflages. I'm not going to make him completely blacked out, but he would be a dark gray around his chin. But Eyeliner. Your character from the favorite anime, Hawks. Oh, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing how much a little thing like a little eyeliner can totally change how you feel? Yeah, or even like, well, right now I don't have my nails manicured because I broke a bunch last weekend to cut them short. I just have not had time to do my nails, and it's like I've really noticed it versus when I do have my nails all sparkly and all that. It makes a huge difference, you know? think we always used to laugh at, say women the way women when I was a kid in the '80s, you get the women who get all gussied up and all that sort of stuff, and it would, be a bit of a, "Oh, high maintenance," or whatever. It's like, yeah, but actually, it totally does make a difference to how you feel, how you present yourself and whatnot. I mean, I've heard people say, like, say, if you work from home, even if you're not on, like, Zoom meetings where anyone can see you, people will sort of say, "Well, you should still, like, get dressed up as if you were going into the office, and you'll feel more professional, and your performance will be better and blah, blah, blah." It's like, I think that actually probably does work, you know, because then you feel like, "Okay, I am in working mode." This is like the upper lip of this guy, the eyeliner yesterday. Yep. Like I said, it's surprising how much of a difference it makes, and in theory, it shouldn't matter, but it totally does. So, getting a little bit shading here. And give Miles' shorts some blackness to them. I feel like these would be kind of wetsuit type material. Emo now. Yeah. Scary, whatever. I mean, it's gonna change over the course of time. Like, I used to dress really, really goth for a long number of years. My average day now, like, I'm wearing, like, pastel pinks and stuff like that. So whatever you like at the time. I'd actually for a while, I'd gotten rid of most of my black clothing other than leggings, except actually when I kinda decided, like, that I wanted to focus on pen and ink, I was like, "Well, I should probably have some black shirts," because sometimes I reached over like this, lay down, I've got a bit and then I end up with a big, like, ink splotch on my forearm, and then if I rub my forearm against my, side, then I have just ruined a shirt that wasn't, black, right? So it's like, I gotta go get a bunch of black shirts again, so, it's always kind of a ebb and flow, uh, and yeah, there's definitely, like, some of the goth stuff really looks awesome. I mean, is it, last week on Tuesday, I think on the Tuesday stream, I finished the Noah's Archipelago calendar thing a little bit early. So then I did a cast portrait for the upcoming book, and it happened to be Noah's basically his daughter-in-law. But she's kind of a goth character who does like the big poofy Victorian style skirt and the corset and all that. And it's like, oh yeah, she's fun to draw. She's kind of a bit character, so I don't get to draw her very often, but it was definitely fun. So now we're starting to get some all you own is black holes. I was like that for a lot of years. Does make it annoying if you're looking for a specific black shirt and you're you remember a couple times like using a flashlight looking in my drawers even though I had my room lights on, but I needed that much extra light to just figure out which shirt was which without having to pull them all out one by one. And now I'm having to do like 5 different laundry washes because you can't put the pale pink stuff in with the blue stuff because the blue ink will run and then it'll ruin it. You know? And then you still gotta have the black wash. So, Do that. I'm scared of being bullied. Do what specifically? Like I was talking about the big Victorian type skirts. I find with that sort of stuff, sometimes if you just like ease into a given look, you know, take baby steps, people don't notice. Although honestly, I think in most cases, you know, I think most people don't actually think as much about what other people wear as we tend to think they will. Um, yeah. I mean, I years ago, I kind of kicked myself that I got rid of this, but a long time ago, I found this huge, super full ball skirt, and it was like black taffeta, probably polyester taffeta, not like silk taffeta, but whatever. Um, but I wore the crap out of that for a few years, and then it was a bit of a bigger size, and I lost some weight, and I was like, I'm totally never gonna gain the weight back, and I didn't wanna bother, um, taking having the skirt taken in, so I ended up donating it, and I've kind of regretted it since because I did gain a bunch of the weight back, you know, and, it would've been totally awesome to have that thing back, but, yeah, such is life. Eventually, I'll probably make my own or whatever, but not that I have a lot of time for sewing. Yeah, and it was a bit of a high low, like, it wasn't, like, super high, but it was, like, the front like, the all around the bottom, there was, like, a ruffle that was almost a foot long. So in the front, underneath it came to about mid-calf, and then it went, to ankle length in the back, and it was awesome. It was good for a lot of different Halloween looks, all sorts of stuff. It was very swooshy, very awesome. And I mean, back in those days, I still have them. I just don't fit into them right now. But I also had a couple of Victorian style corsets because I'd taken a class with a guy who used to work in the costuming department at local theaters and whatnot. So yeah, I had like the whole 9 yards, probably literally in terms of how much fabric was in that skirt. Um, it's a fun look for sure. One other thing, like, it's kind of a bit of a bummer that, the current fashion norms, we tend to just everybody wears jeans and tank tops and t-shirts and stuff. But, I found generally speaking, when you do dress up, nobody gets, you know, usually nobody gets pissy about that or whatever, be like, "Oh, you look so pretty." I mean, I guess if you're in a situation where there's some, like, toxic mean girls or whatever around, then that can happen, but, you just tell them to go to hell, or just ignore them or whatever. Usually, if they're being dicks about it, it's because they're pissed off that you thought of it first. So, yeah, it was a great skirt. I mean, some of the ones that are fun are like belly dance skirts. If not all, I mean, not all belly dance skirts will be that big, but um, sometimes that's the easiest way, especially if you don't mind like polyester. Um, I tend to react badly. Like usually get like weird rashes if I wore. Um, oh yeah, if you're in school, yeah, I get it. School, they can be bastards. But someday you'll be out of school, and then then you don't have to care. Um, but yeah, sometimes the belly dance skirts are great for finding like that kind of floofy, lots of poofiness and flounces and all that stuff. A lot of them, and some of them, if you can wear polyester, it doesn't like make your skin break out or whatnot. Um, they're pretty affordable as well. So I know you know, I'd have to go look in my storage. I may still even have a couple flouncy belly dance skirts from when I used to dance years ago. Um, but It is something I'd like to remake in natural fibers, and have, like, the poofy flounces around and all that sort of stuff because 'cause they're so much fun. One of the looks I'm kind of into now, but often don't wear because this is not practical in my life is kind of more like not so much goth, but, like, some of the Ibiza style, like the, boho, um, I don't know what their current fashion or their current, collection is like, but, like, it's a brand I think called Miss June out of France that has, like, a lot of, like, ruffly and, some kind of tropical colors and stuff like that, and I love all that stuff. Um, I forget the name, one of the Instagram accounts I follow, Encante something or other, which I think is also based in Ibiza. It's, like, lots of old, like, reused, lace and doilies and stuff like that as flounces, and it looks, really fun. And then I just, like, on my day-to-day basis, it's like, yeah, but practically speaking, what I'm gonna wear is leggings and a t-shirt and, you know, so it's kind of one of my New Year's resolutions, perpetually is dress a little bit nicer. And it's like, yeah, but also I gotta be practical about what I'm doing, but so we're starting to get this sense of this whale. I'm just gonna kinda have a look at it in, say I'm kind of watching the stream on my laptop. It's funny, it looks different in the camera than it does right down here because it looks a lot more finished. But I think what I need to do is come in probably with the glass pen for some really fine line work when it condescends itself to actually lay down a line, and try and do a little bit more foamy kind of texture, which should probably be a little bit almost like that kind of sort of a delicate sort of thing, but the idea is to have the froth look come up a little bit. But yeah, I can definitely relate to the school bully type thing. I mean, although when I look back at my high school, it seemed worse at the time than when I look back. It's like, okay, actually, there were like four mean girls. There was this a pair of sisters and their cousin, and yes, they kind of made everybody's life hell. And they were technically speaking cheerleaders, but actually the other cheerleaders hated them. Like, it was all this sort of stuff, and you kinda look and go, "Eh, they really only had power because some of us allowed them to have power," which isn't necessarily helpful or actionable advice, I realize, but on the plus side, school does end, and then once you're out of school, you kinda have a lot more control over who you hang around and all that. And then when you get to be middle-aged, you realize that actually a lot of people don't really evolve beyond school, which is unfortunate, but kinda just gotta filter them out as much as you can. And the weird kids dressed like with chains and very baggy clothes, and you do the weird kid things like read manga and act the part. Yep, I can relate. What grade was it? I think it was ninth grade, I got into, punk, like, old school, like, Sex Pistols and Ramones and stuff, and I cut off my hair into, like, a short wannabe Sid Vicious hairdo, you know, and, did the crazy makeup and all that sort of stuff, although it's kind of well, obviously, it's gonna depend on your school and whatnot, but I was kinda lucky that at my school, both, junior high and I'm in Canada, so we do, like, elementary school goes through 7th grade, and then junior high, it'd be, like, 8, 9, 10, and then you go well, at least at the time I was there, I think it may be different now, and then there was, like, a specific secondary high school that was, like, 11th and 12th grade. So, both my junior high and the actual high school, the captain of the football team, was somebody I was friends with because he actually was really into, like, alt rock and whatnot, so and was an artsy kid himself, but he happened to also be a jock. So, kind of, that meant that the, popular kids in my school were pretty tolerant. Um, I know in some other schools it's not like that, but, yeah. And yeah, I mean, again, the bullying, it's a bitch. I mean, I can also relate to that. The thing to kind of remember, and I know this is something that adults tell kids all the time. It sounds like a cliche, and then when you're like in your 40s, you realize it's actually true. Um, is usually the kids who are going to be the biggest bullies are miserable little shits. Not just in terms of their behavior. I mean, like they bully other kids because they actually are miserable themselves. Now, that doesn't necessarily help in the thick of things, but it's something to keep in mind that it's not, don't take it personally. I know that's easier said than done, right? But I just think of like the girls who made my life hell for like 5 years from junior high and high school and whatnot. Um, it was, they were desperate to try and be seen as popular. Um, Which was probably a bad tactical move on their part because like I said, I was friends with the captain of the football team and whatnot, so probably them being nasty to me didn't really help them, but they are lashing out, right? And like I said, I totally get it that it doesn't seem like that matters and whatnot, but it's kinda just like, as hard as it is, you kinda have to go like, "Okay, well, they're miserable. If they continue on this path, they will continue to be miserable. But whereas you get to leave them all behind, you know, guarantee you that, or maybe not guarantee, but 90% chance that by the time, if you say you go to your 25-year high school reunion, I didn't, but my best friend did for us, but for our school. But when and if you get there, there's a very good chance that you'll find that the kids who are bullies at that time, um, will have terrible lives, you know? Not that you can I'm saying not that I'm saying go point and laugh, but I'm just saying that's how it usually goes. Um, the kids who, even if they weren't bullies, but they thought they were, hot shit or whatnot, a lot of times those kids peak in high school. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Married with Children, but, like, part of the joke there is, like, Al Bundy is, a shoe salesman supporting an ungrateful wife and 2 kids and all this, and he keeps reliving the time he got 4 touchdowns in 1 game at Polk High. Like, that actually is kind of real in some places. Um, so that whole thing about, like, people who are still, or, like, there's a Bruce Springsteen song, "Glory Days," like, all that stuff is absolutely what happens. Whereas, the weird kids usually go on and, go and do cool things after graduation. Um, so, of course, a lot of the weird kids just don't go back for the 25-year reunion, but people find out about it anyways. So I don't know if any of that's helpful, but it's something to keep in mind that, this too shall pass, and bullies tend to be losers, and, but you get your laugh about 25 years in the future when you find out about just how much of a loser, None of which makes it easier in the actual moment, because I know when I was your age, I heard people tell me the same thing too. I was like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 whatever." But it ends up being true, you just kinda don't realize it for a long time. That's kinda, I guess, the pep talk for today, but, yeah, it's rough while you're going through it for sure. Alright. Like, stopping to, check in the, on my laptop, like, monitoring, because sometimes it looks different up there than it does down here. We need a little bit more definition maybe of this wave, and a little bit more that this is not connected here. Add a little more lines so that that's not quite so stark white. Yeah, a little bit of shadow under here. All right, yeah, bring a little in here, get a little bit more darker kind of lines in there. Then I think that one is maybe kind of, I think what I need is a few lines that kind of go, get the sense of this. I was going to say cloud. It's not a cloud, obviously. It's a wave, bow wave, basically. Get a little bit more line on that. And then I think we is moving on to the next. Don't understand how the rude kids are popular and not the nice weird kids, because the weird kids are the nicest kids ever. I mean, it depends. Obviously, it goes school to school. Um, like the school I was in, to be honest, like the captain of the football team and the captain of the cheerleading squad were actually really nice. Now, granted, I'd known the captain of the cheerleading squad since sixth grade. So she and I got along pretty well, but like I never saw her bullying other kids or anything like that. She seemed to be actually really nice. It was some of the other girls on the team who were bitches, who ironically weren't actually nearly as popular as they thought they were, but I think they were like trying to flex or something. It was weird. We're gonna move on to Miles stuffing his face with some waffles for the next part. Um, but there definitely were some of the popular kids who were dicks and whatnot as well, for sure. Um, but I think also it's kind of, in a way, it's not. I think sometimes those kids aren't really popular for who they are or their personality. They're the ones who are, um, they're on the sports teams and whatnot. So it's kind of like, celebrities being dicks or whatnot. It's not that they're popular because they're nice. They're well known because of what they do, whether it's, being good at sports or whatever. So that's something to keep in mind too. And usually eventually they tend to pay for it, like, um, I think at some point I looked up, like some of my elementary school bullies, just from a different school, and they didn't necessarily come to the same junior and senior high that I went to. But then you went, oh, like this guy who was obnoxious as like a third grader. And it's like, oh, he's a used car salesman. I was like, that kind of that checks, that tracks. So that happens, right? Um, and I think it depends also on the school culture. Like some schools, the teachers and whatnot will treat the star athletes different and better, and it gives the impression of them having more power and popularity than they really will end up having. Um, so, and I will say, not in every school for sure, but I have absolutely run into, weird art kids who were absolutely insufferable. So it kind of depends, right, on the mix. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of it in terms of like popularity and stuff like that really comes down to your particular school. Like some schools, it's all about whoever scores the touchdowns and whatnot, and everybody kisses their butts and whatnot. And which case, it kind of sucks if you're not one of the sports kids in those schools. Um, but then there's definitely in artsier schools or whatnot, then it ends up with its own structure, I guess. Um, and sometimes I think also the it's tempting for some of the popular kids to become rude and arrogant because um, like it goes the other direction where the popular kids get rude if they let it go to their head. Um, and again, we see that say in the adult world with celebrities or with bosses and stuff like that, where they have a little bit of power and they try and wield it, and it makes them insufferable. And then you get a weird kid who will do something like Dilbert and make a huge fortune off of poking fun at horrible bosses he's had. you know, well, the bosses themselves are probably in the exact same job, lording it over a new crop of underlings, the same way they did 20 years ago, and they never learn. So. Where is nib? Is this the nib I want? We are having a bad nib day today. I mean, I'm making it work, don't get me wrong, but some days the pins are a lot easier to deal with. So we got Miles in his normal hairdo. Well, actually, I guess the other one, his hair wasn't that weird. But doing his little pompadour thing. I'm brainstorming for a coloring book that I'm going to try and have out this fall for like Halloween. That's going to be not all of my characters, but a bunch of my characters going trick or treating, including Noah taking his daughter Ursula out from Noah's Archipelago. Those are the characters I work with on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then Ricky and Myles, and then Ricky's nephew Marvin will be going out as well. And Myles, so in the Ricky world, most people are rat people, but there's also the mice that live across the canyon in their society. And Miles is half mouse, half rat. So he is a full head shorter than the rat people when you think about the size differential. But for the purposes of Halloween trick or treating, he's going to be using that to his advantage because he's going to dress up as Elvis and everybody's going to assume he's still a kid. So he's going to get himself a whole bunch of free candy doing that. Uh, anyways, point is he has a bit of an Elvis hairdo because he actually does like dressing up as Elvis more than he likes to let on. So both of these, of course, um, are related to words starting with W, but they will presumably be separate stories. I've got kind of a whole There's a whole bunch of these drawings so far where Miles is, like, stuffing his face, so I think we'll probably have one whole story that's just about Miles's love of food. Um, yeah, I may come back when all is said and done and dried with, like, a really fine tip, fine liner to add a little bit more cross hatching, but, we'll see. Uh, so Miles, let's see here, he wears his glasses, so just gonna do these like that. I think one of the reels I posted, before I started live streaming, I would sometimes, film working on these pages, and then I would post, speed it up into a reel. And there was one where somebody, commented on, based on Miles's glasses, said, "Is this like Harry Potter as a rat?" It's like, well, I mean, probably, well, not intentionally, but, definitely he's got the same, style of glasses. And that nib is, I wonder if my first nib is now, after an hour of soaking in water, whether it will be running a little better. It's like I've got a bunch that look just like this one, but this one works better than any of them. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. And I've actually had this nib probably for like 20 years. I know some people are like, oh no, you got to replace your nibs regularly. I'm like, well, if they still work, this one's kind of getting to the point where maybe it's time to get rid of it. Um, or I just have to like see if I can like save it by soaking it in pen cleaner and using an ultrasonic cleaner and doing a few other tricks like that. Anyways, but the line it gives, I find, is better. Oh, see, now it's working. Sometimes just the long soak is what it really needs. Uh, so, good to go. Hey, no worries. Thanks for stopping by, Luna, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care. All right. Perhaps what I need to start doing with these nibs is at 5 o'clock when I'm getting, before I'm actually going live, but, the time when I charge up my phone, because I stream from my phone, perhaps what I need to do is soak my nibs, because that sure seemed to make this one behave. There's his whiskers. Obviously, if Miles was actually a rat dude, he would, or half rat, half mouse dude, he would presumably have more than three whiskers per cheek, but we just draw in three. It's kind of like the standard cartoony shorthand for more than two, but not having to actually draw in every single one. So, think the way I've drawn this knife, it kind of is going to look more like a steak knife, which, you know what? I mean, presumably he would just be eating his waffles with a regular butter knife, but who knows? Miles is serious about his grubs, so perhaps he is actually going to use a steak knife for his waffles. Wouldn't be out of the realm of something he would possibly do. And of course, because he is a rat, he does have claws. Well, rat, mouse, both rats and mice have claws. So I like to draw his little fingers sometimes where you see that little poking down. So I mentioned earlier about this project being based on the Alphabet Superset challenge from a while back. I think I'd gotten through the letter H and then I set it aside for a while. Did I randomly and then started up with J in either late January, early February, something like that. So we're on W. That means we've got X, Y, and Z next. Next week, X, and then Y and Z. And then we are going to be done, not with this project, because I am going to write some short stories for it, and I'll probably have some more illustrations once I know what the short stories are going to be. Probably end up doing some more short stories, but what we will come to in, I guess, 4 weeks from now, once the next three are done. I do have some spreads I would probably want to redraw, but I may wait and do that after I have after I have the short stories. Just like it may be that some of the spreads I've drawn, if I don't come up with a story for them, I'll come up with something else. In the end, I don't even know that the structure of the book is going to show an alphabetical kind of theme. Depends on how the stories go, right? They may, you know, maybe something I draw from the letter Z is going to go with, or Z, depending how you want to say it, might fit with C for carnival, you know. Um, I haven't determined that. Um, anyways, in between this phase of the initial spreads and when I come back and add to um, any drawings or do new illustrations or whatever, which I would do on the stream as well, we will be moving on to another project on Mondays, and that will be one that involves Ricky and Miles. They'll actually be for illustrating what they call one of the things that um, creatives kind of need to do is the whole newsletter marketing thing. And one of the ways that we get people to sign up for our newsletters is to give freebies away. So I'm kind of looking at figuring out what story, whether it'll be one that I've already written, like just doing illustrations and putting that out as the reader magnet, or whether I might redo. Yeah. I'm gonna put a note saying Knuckles, meaning probably fix how I do his knuckles, or Photoshop out those knuckles. They look a little weird. Um, anyways, I will decide in the next couple weeks. Either I'll write a new short story with Ricky and Miles, or I will use one of the ones that has both of them in it that I already have written, and I'll come up with a list of illustrations, and we'll be working on that on Mondays for a little while. And I guess by the time I get that finished, then we'll kind of see where we're at in terms of short stories for for Miles Morris' Pursuit of Happiness, or whether I will also have another book project where it's like a whole bunch of short stories narrated by Ricky, and then some of them have Miles and whatnot. So anyways, I want to do a collection of those short stories. So we may start working on that, but that would be, in the fall or whatever. Anyways, point is, we will be moving on to a different project involving Miles uh, pretty s- pretty soon. Actually, that's going to be happening basically with the whole first 3 nights of the week because um, these almost streams on Wednesdays. I'm going to be done what I'm doing for the first Samo book. I don't know about this week, but certainly by the end of June, and then we're going to be done um, the alphabetical um, illustrations for Miles Maarav here at again. Well, actually sooner than the end of June, and then also with Noah's Archipelago on Tuesdays, the calendar project, which is going to now be a book of days. The main monthly illustrations, I'm going to wrap those up. Again, I've got four left to do, um, and so three. Well, tomorrow and then three more, and then that's going to get set aside to work on a short story, illustrated short story. That will be a newsletter giveaway when it's done. So, anyways, we're gonna have some changes around here. But, changes within basically the same thing, just new projects with these characters. Anyways, so there's his little I always like doing the diagonal, although, one of these days I'm gonna have to, like, go sit in, like, a, food court at a mall with my sketchbook and just, like, draw people's T-shirts. Because some of them obviously, if you're a girl and you got boobs, you got horizontal, um, folds. Um, guys, it depends how, loose well, I mean, if a guy is wearing a tight T-shirt, then he may also have horizontal, fabric lines. Anyways, just gonna kinda use this nib more for outlines because if when I'm scratching in to color in, even though there's a reason why I do that, which is that then when I go over with the fatter nib, if I skip areas to leave highlights or whatnot, there's still texture there. Um, anyways, but it does mean that it kind of wants to catch in some spots and rip up. The paper, by the way, is Bristol board. I think I've said that on other streams. And uh, this I think is smooth. In fact, I know it's smooth Bristol board. Some of what I've been working on in the last couple months is like recycled Bristol board, which honestly, oh, it's terrible because that stuff really gouges when the pens go over it. And let's not forget Miles's tail here. I will say, and I think I've said this on previous streams, my personal opinion is that the smooth Bristol board that I'm working on by Strathmore is not the same as it used to be because I have pads from my stash, like or projects I worked on smooth Bristol board from like 20 years ago, and it is like you can tell visibly like it's smoother to the point where it has like a bit of a sheen almost, whereas this stuff doesn't. You find this nib if I there's a sweet spot. If you put too much pressure, then it doesn't draw. Then it digs in and it doesn't draw. If you put not enough pressure, then it glides and doesn't draw. Anyways, we're going to start with the claw, the thumb. Also find sometimes find where I'm just suddenly kind of dissatisfied with how I'm drawing things, and like that hand is I like, that one I don't. So I'd probably redo that and then like Photoshop them together. But um, I do think it's probably time that I spend a little bit, not for a long while, but like for a month or so, try and spend like an hour every Sunday afternoon, like looking at photos of hands and cartooning hands, doing hand references to um, kind of improve that. I'll say there's some comedians I remember seeing about a year or so ago. You know when the AI memes first started coming through and they all had like six fingers and like weird screwed up things with the hands. I think the AI is a little better now, but like a year and a half ago, they weren't. And I remember of course a lot of artists are very against AI. Um, Personally, I find for what I do, AI is kind of irrelevant in my opinion, but I definitely see why a lot of others are really pissed. Anyways, like, whatever was being discussed on this podcast, they're kind of like a news comedy show, and somebody made the comment about, yeah, well, you can always tell it's AI because it can't draw hands properly, and the one co-host said, "Oh, so it's just like human artists then." I remember laughing my ass off about that. I'm going like, that's it's the old Homer Simpson line. It's funny because it's true. I mean, it's not true for all, but I definitely notice at times where it's like, oh yeah, I could probably go brush up on whatever, whether it's drawing hands for focusing on drawing hands again for a few weeks, or here's this little arm. Yeah, his arm's coming down this way. Or focusing on, noses or some obviously here we kind of just fake it. Same with Noah's Archipelago, but doing more detailed figure drawing, I think always helps improve skills. Uh, so, anyways, that's my little blurb about something I know I'm gonna try and work on a little bit more over the next month or so. Is like some studies of hands and whatnot. Working on. Like, I think his chest, he is that narrow, his arm, but it does look a little weird to have the arm gap, so I don't know. Yeah. Well, when I come in with the fatter nib, which is gonna be like right now, maybe we're gonna add a little ink under there. So, pause a moment to take a little drink of water. So I have actually been talking quite a lot today. I know some streams I'm like, "Oh, hi. Hey, welcome to the show," and then I just kind of shut up and draw. But I have actually been talking quite a lot today. I'll also kind of say, because it just popped into my head, um, for anybody who's missed some of what I've been drawing, wants to see what I've been working on, but doesn't have the time to watch, 5 streams a week, I totally get it. I do have, I post usually on Sundays or Saturdays, and it's on my other channel, Pura Dracula Art Vlogs. Um, but I do a weekly recap where I kind of just, I was gonna say quickly, but they're usually like 45 minutes to an hour long. But I go through what I've drawn in a given week. I'm actually gonna do this part with a brush. Um, and I kind of will talk a little bit about my process and whatnot and inspiration. And if I manage to somehow miraculously finish a little early, then I often, you know, there's often little side rants and stuff like that about things that play into the work that I'm doing. So, anyways, point is, you can check that out and sort of see each week what it is I've been up to. I do have to be careful with this brush because the bristles are a little bit long and it's not one that holds a point well. So you kind of want to be cautious because I don't want it suddenly swinging the bristles out into an area that's actually supposed to stay white. But it is good for doing kind of areas that will be basically flat black. Like say if Miles's collar here was made of velvet. I'm going to switch to a bigger. Now with this one, I'm kind of looking, going like, do I want to add some coloring in the background? And I think for right now, I'll probably leave it. Um, I have definitely been known to kind of come back after everything's dry and like go and do add some texture with liner pens. But these ones I do try and keep the basic drawing you know, as a dip pen because it does look different. So I don't want his jacket to be like pure black, but definitely want to add a little bit more darkness into it. That's pretty good at this point. Let's now kind of give the table an edge. Ideally an even one, but anyways. I have a feeling we will be ending exactly on time because probably by the time I draw Miles's waffles, that will be about 15 minutes, I would guess. So, um, so I'll just kind of mention too with this particular stream, it will be made public again. So if anyone's like just tuning in now and would like to watch the rest of it, what I normally do is YouTube can take about a day, not quite, but like longer than 12 hours, less than 24 usually. Um, it does take a while for it to go through and, you know, um, do the processing and all that to get it up to um, the same video quality as when it was live. Before then, it can look kind of grainy and whatever. Um, so I used to always just like make my streams public at the end, but I think that probably wasn't that great, honestly. So what I do now is it's saved as private overnight, and then at some point tomorrow afternoon, I check. And if it is when it's finished processing, then I make it fully public again. So sometime tomorrow afternoon, well, yeah, well, tomorrow, considering what all I got to do tomorrow, probably won't be till like 4 p.m. But I will then make it public. So that's kind of what I do with all my streams now. Is it ends up being public the day after. I'm just kind of pausing as I think, because I got to remember that these are waffles, so there are going to be a whole bunch of little squares full of syrup. They're going to look a little bit different. Um, anyways, so that's going to be the case. Um, that this will be available for reviewing tomorrow afternoon. And then the rest of the streaming schedule this week, I am here for all of the streams as far as I know. That's the plan. So tomorrow we will be streaming Noah's Archipelago with the September image for the Noah's Archipelago Book of Days, which was going to be a 2027 calendar. And then I just was like, yeah, you know what? Why don't we just kind of do this a little differently? Make it an actual book kind of talking about, because one of the recurring jokes with Noah is that he loves all sorts of holidays and whatnot, including fake ones. You know, one I always give is like National Strawberry Cheesecake Day or National Apricot Day, those kind of holidays, right? So we'll have little write ups about those and maybe probably a lot of small illustrations as well. Um, but the first phase is going to be just getting through the main monthly illustrations. And then I'm going to work on a different project for a while and come back. Um, So tomorrow we are doing September, and then I just start filling in these little spaces to give it the sense of uh, waffles. Um, Anyways, Wednesday we are working on a couple more. Wednesday is almost a destroyer day, and we will be working on a couple more of the illustrations from Zalmo's Secret Basement Lab that we started last Wednesday. And then Thursday is the day we work on coloring book pages, and the current one I'm working on there is the A to Z of Noah's job history. So we will be doing some coloring book pages for. I honestly haven't drawn them yet, but we will be doing a couple pages anyways from that. And then Friday we are working on Ricky B Goes to Sea, my graphic novel that involves Miles's cousin's boyfriend Ricky. And I believe what we are doing this week is Ricky's designing a submarine. We'll just kind of give the Cole's Notes version of that. Um, and he is taking it to his cousin Darren, who builds hot rods, to see if he can get Darren to build this thing for him. So we're going to have Darren's reaction. But I think what we're doing first is actually the B story in this book is about like intrusive ads, eavesdropping on what you're saying and then serving you up ads based on that. So we're going to have actually an ad for Darren's custom cars, like his hot rod shot. Because, yeah, that's the B story. So we'll be getting 2, maybe 3 pages done. Excuse me. Another little glass of water, drink a sip of water. And speaking actually of Ricky B Goes to Sea, I have done like a little book tour because I've got the pages for it in 3 different portfolios. 2 of which I'm going to ink on stream, and obviously the last one I'm gonna not, because then it'll be, spoilers, all that kind of stuff. So, but because the first book is now completely inked, I did a little video flip through of those pages. So if you're curious about the Ricky B Goes to Sea project, or you've like stumbled on it and you were like, what is going on here? Have a look at that video because I get into it and I explain the story and the inspiration and all that sort of stuff. So from now on, I'm going to have the link to that in the description of all the Ricky B Goes to Sea videos, because and streams and whatnot, because then people can go look at it. So yeah, it is kind of starting to look like a waffle, sort of. I think originally I was going to draw Miles as having a stack of like 3 waffles, or a whole plate with like, you know, way more than that even. But I think 2 is a reasonable amount. Besides, maybe these is seconds. Maybe it's thirds. Maybe he's already had like 4 waffles, and this is waffle 5 and waffle 6. you know, syrup's kind of hard to draw, honestly, especially because the maple syrup is actually translucent. And you want to kind of make it look a little bit glistening. Anyways, there is a travesty. It's a square in a waffle that does not have any syrup in it. What is the world coming to? I know it's like kind of a bit of a weird combo. It's like here he's almost getting eaten by a whale, and now he's about to eat a bunch of waffles. It's like one's kind of a lot more of an adventure than the other, but Miles looks a lot more impressed with the waffles. I have a waffle maker. I should make waffles more often. Actually found on allrecipes.com they had some really interesting waffle recipes like pumpkin waffles and whatnot as well, which I haven't tried yet, but I probably should. So there, and we've got his waffle texture. Just gonna add a little bit of shading, kind of scritchy, scratchy over. All right, and now thinking of it's kind of like syrup pitcher that they have at like IHOP or whatnot, where there's like a metal thing, and when you pull, um, there's like a little lever inside the handle, and the metal thing slides back, and then you can the syrup would come out from there. Make it like there's a little bit of a gob of something on there. I don't even know if that looks correct. um, I may have to tweak that top of the syrup jar. Soak that one and use the fatter nib for a bit. Maybe I'll actually use the brush. There. Now, oh yeah, gotta finish the outline of the plate, otherwise his waffles are just on the table. That's not good. All right. You know what? I think that's gonna be it for this. I may come back and rethink the background or whatnot, but for right now, I think we're gonna call that done. So let's do our usual review. A couple of very, very different images for tonight's show. I'm just gonna try and bring that up just a wee bit. Of course, we just finished Miles stuffing his face with I was gonna say walnuts. Those aren't walnuts. Waffles. Waffles. Anyways, we started out with Miles's water skiing, minding his own business, and a big old whale comes up right behind him and scares the crap out of him, tail straight up, like, "Ah!" So, anyways, very different sort of a vibe in this drawing, of course, and a lot more detail. Um, and as I mentioned earlier, is kind of inspired by seeing some videos from BBC Earth on YouTube showing humpback whales feeding. And so that was our first drawing of the night. And again, these are for a project called Miles Mara's Pursuit of Happiness, and our main guy here is Miles. And then we spent the last little while drawing Waffles. Miles about to stuff his face. So that's going to be it for tonight's stream. Like I said, tomorrow we are doing some Noah's Archipelago calendar, well, Book of Days stuff. And then Wednesday's Alma the Destroyer. Tomorrow's going to be full color like markers, as per usual on a Tuesday. Well, so far. Wednesday is going to be pen and ink. So I guess that means I better, when I'm running errands tomorrow, I'm going to try and remember to get a thing of pen cleaner and soak a bunch of nibs tomorrow evening during my stream. Um, Although I may keep a few out because I may, if the September marker illustration is done early, I may do what I did last week and break out the nibs and the India ink and do another cast portrait for tomorrow, but we'll see. Some of the Destroyer's Secret Basement Lab Part 2 on Wednesday. Noah's Archipelago with a couple more of his jobs illustrated for a coloring book on Thursday. And Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat on Friday. Talking with his cousin Darren about his submarine plans. So that's it for tonight, and that's what's coming up for the rest of the week. Hope you've enjoyed this week's or tonight's stream, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye for now, and bye bye, Miles.